Hello true believers. Welcome to the spoiler-free review of the last issue of the newest Sentry mini-series. This review will be slightly different than my previous reviews. This time I will not be reviewing this single issue, but rather the entire book as a whole. However, I will say that this issue was pretty damn good, and that the issue and the overall story ended on a high and positive note. With that being said though, this issue and the overall story unfortunately rushed to that ending. That is something I have complained about in one of my previous reviews. I still think that what the writer, Jeff Lemire, had set up in the first 2 issues demanded more than just 5 issues. Almost every one of Jeff's new ideas and inclusions could have carried 1 or 2 whole issues. In a perfect world we would have gotten a Sentry series, which went at least 10 or 12 issues, and covered all of the things in more detail Jeff Lemire had in mind for the Sentry. The way it is now, the last issue rushed from one plot point to another to close them off. Well, maybe closed off is the wrong term. At the first glance it looks like the stories of some characters in this book have already come to an end. But if you think about it twice, you will realize that everyone in this book can be brought back and expanded upon. But we will talk about that more in the spoiler discussion. Anyway, not a single panel in this last issue feels wasted. It is quite the opposite actually. Every single panel in this issue means something. And that in my eyes is the sign of damn good writing. Jeff Lemire has done a fantastic job on this book, and more importantly on the Sentry as a character. The Sentry is one of those characters who absolutely demand a writer who is willing to dive deep into a character's history, get a good understanding and grasp of it, and then build on it. Jeff has done just that. Other writers have not. And that shows very well in Sentry's character development under these different pens. I really hope that Jeff returns to Marvel one day and gets to write the Sentry again. Based on facts I just made up, it appears as if Joshua Cassara has killed Kim Jacinto in real life and taken over as the sole artist for this issue. And given how Kim Jacinto once said that Superman would win in a fight against the Sentry, I'm willing to provide an alibi for my boy Joshua Cassara. Considering how the art turned out in this issue, he deserves it anyway. Joshua pays a lot of attention to even the smallest detail. It's actually insane. Especially when you consider that the art still remains super dynamic. There is no cheap ass tracing going on in this book. There are almost no flat angles in this book. It is simply good art, with a lot of effort behind it. And in this issue in particular there is even some gore going on, which I absolutely love. Especially when you consider how many other books Marvel publishes, which would never feature scenes like these. It is really refreshing to have Marvel comics like the Sentry around. And I'm happy that the Sentry got a talented creative team consisting out of Jeff Lemire, Joshua Cassara, Kim Jacinto and Rain Beredo, who made the best out of the book. In a perfect world they would have gotten more issues to work with, but oh well, we can't have it all. All I know is that in only a couple of months, we are getting this mini-series as a trade paperback. In January to be exact. You can probably already imagine that this book ends with a major open door for the Sentry to return. And I do hope that the trade paperback sales will be good enough to make Sentry's return happen rather sooner than later. At the same time I believe that the Sentry has a dedicated fan base, which would even buy a team book simply for the sake of the Sentry. That way Sentry fans would still get more of the Golden Boy, while Marvel would get a couple of extra bucks. We will just have to wait and see how it all turns out. Considering how positive the reviews and feedback have been so far, I'm fairly optimistic for Sentry's future. Especially considering that this book ends on a note which screams to be expanded on. The book did promise to shake the Sentry and the entire Marvel universe to its foundation, and that is pretty much exactly what happened. You already saw the Sentry do his foundational Harlem Shake at the end of the 4th issue, and that only grew in scale in the 5th and last issue. Overall I give the entire Sentry book easy 5 out of 5 ripped off superhero sidekick arms. The story has been a blast. The characterization of the Sentry and his supporting cast has been a blast. The art and the coloring have been a blast. It was not only a great Sentry story, but pretty much a great superhero story for adults in general. If you haven't picked up the book yet, then make sure to do so. Otherwise you'll be missing out on a great adventure. Have fun with the book, and until then, have a nice day. And as always, stay vigilant.